He's on YouTube.
He comes out from behind the TV.
Emergency.
All right, good evening, everyone, and music team. Thanks for anchoring us and opening our hearts in that beautiful way. Twists and turns, all welcome and love, right?
Yeah.
As we talk today, continuing the theme of good to grand, good, good to great to grand, right? We're talking about the power of vision this week. And this month, we've explored lots of different topics along the way. We've looked at exploring the inner landscape and opening that up. We took stock of where we are in our process, the values that we aspire to. We think about where we can live those values in powerful ways in our lives. And as we begin to have clarity in those spaces where we want to live from, this week we're going to talk about those spaces and opportunities for others to do the same, and the impact of this process on our collective experience. And this supports the continued growth and unfolding of a world that works for everyone. Dr. Ernest Holmes in Creative Living in 1975 said, "It seems as though everything," published in Creative Living in 1975. Let me say, he didn't say it in 1975. Maybe. It seems as though everything in life is meant to circulate. And the moment that we stop the circulation, that very act stagnates what would have moved freely. Stagnant water was once flowing that became sidetracked from its own flow, and that which was perfect now became impure. It is just the same with our mind and our emotions. There is a pressure against us for self-expression. And when it is expressed, our life flows happily. But when we tend to hinder it, there is stagnation. The creative impulse must create something, or we are unhappy. I love this thought from Dr. Holmes, equating this sense of like life is compelling us towards authentic self-expression of our true nature. And that when we begin to stagnate or stop the flow, that's when spirit, us, move to a place of disconnect or discontent. And then we tend to attract more of that around us. So this week, we're going to talk about how that good to great to grand looks what it looks like when individual authenticity ripples out into the community. Now, good can be defined as adequate, right? Meeting basic expectations and maintaining the status quo. Yeah, how are things? Yeah, I'm good, they're good. Great is exceeding the expectations, striving for excellence, and achieving this deep sense of personal growth. Now, grand could be defined as reaching a level of collective, group self-actualization, where the focus shifts from individual success to communal or community well-being and transformation. So from, yeah, things are good, to I'm exceeding expectations, to we are all rocking and rolling. The energy, the vibe, the movement of the people living authentically creates something that no individual offers themselves. It's the power of the collective community. Now, this larger perspective starts with the creation of supportive spaces that honor and encourage the authenticity of others. And conveniently, this occurs naturally and almost effortlessly as individuals live in alignment with their soul's desire. People being comfortable with themselves and more fully being themselves and channeling and fostering the gifts that they have encourages other folks to move into the place where they express their true authentic selves in a place free of judgment and fear or rejection. And this extends beyond just lip service to saying everyone is welcome here. It means urging us to actively impact the world around us through meaningful actions and meaningful engagement. Now, when people are uncomfortable, When people are comfortable, the opposite of uncomfortable, when they're comfortable with themselves and in integrity, they allow themselves to be vulnerable, exposing parts of themselves that were previously hidden or at least unrevealed. When we're vulnerable, allowing our humanity to show, this sets others with their own humanness to feel more at ease and willing to share who they truly are. When we are being real, we nurture an environment where others feel free to be real. We are in truth vibrational beings, right? And people pick that up. We're sending out, we're attracting vibrations all the time. And if we're walking around with a lampshade on our head or with a costume on and it's not Halloween, people sense that energetically. And my amazing spouse, Kim, deeply metaphysical woman, and gets knocked upside the head by a metaphysical 2x4 almost on a daily basis, and shares it. She remembered the story of when that horses, people just like horses, they pick up on the energy of those around them. It's a totally an energetic thing. So at a self-enhancement seminar that Kim and I did over 20 years ago, I did the men's group, she did the women's group, and the women leadership course did a horse whisperer exercise. Okay, so horses being herd animals as well as food for predators, they have this mechanism that alerts them when something isn't right. It's essential for their survival. And the horse whisper activity involves standing next to a horse in a corral, declaring a goal, and then without pulling the horse, getting it to move along with you. The premise is that if the horse could feel that you were in integrity, if it felt right, what you were sharing as your goal and vision spoken out into the world, then it would move forward. So Kim shared that some of her peers had hilarious experiences with their horse. And these were all different horses. One friend had a consuming fear of being embarrassed or humiliated. Her horse, rather than following her around in the ring like he was supposed to, rolled around on his back in the dirt, making almost sexual sounds. She was horrified and later laughed that this is exactly what she is afraid of out of life. Another friend of hers is a golden girl in her career, but in matters of love, hasn't made much headway. She stood next to her horse and declared that she would have a healthy and happy love relationship. And then she and her horse moved not 1 inch forward. What's more, they both began scraping a hole in the dirt impatiently. Kim said she was tempted to laugh, but she knew she would get hers when it was her turn. Kim says, I stood by my horse and made a declaration about the career and an income that I intended to have. I then looked at my horse and began moving forward. To my surprise, the horse moved forward right along with me. It did. I did it, she said. I'm so proud and excited. Look at me. And as they walked around the ring, the horse began to slow down. And in a short time, she said, I was no longer by the horse. I was in front of it, looking back and beckoning it to keep up with me. As I continued, she said, to beckon the horse to come up with me, the horse moved slower and slower until it finally stopped. And I kid you not, shook its head, no. Kim says the situation with the horse mimicked just about every career experience that she's ever had. At first, she gets people on board with her. She's excited and they're excited and they're off the starting blocks with much enthusiasm. But in a short time, she says, I go from enthusiastic to taskmaster, making the project my usual to-do list. My partners, my financiers, or potential partners, employers, start to lose steam as she loses enthusiasm. And before I know it, they're at a dead stop, shaking their head no. As humans, we respond to the vibrations We recognize authenticity shared by others in our surroundings in the very same way. When we are being real, and more importantly, when we have been through circumstances that will enable us to understand and empathize, or at least not misunderstand other people's perspectives, then we can come into alignment with our true self meeting their true self. For example, Kim also worked with survivors of abuse and trauma and found that they had a radar for others who had been through similar circumstances, and they felt more comfortable opening to them. They felt a degree of trust. Now you think about in spiritual community, how many of you have taken a class, some sort of class in spirituality, right? Think about the intimacy that begins almost immediately when people begin to gather. And so often classes will begin with, tell us how you got here. And there's something about the power of an authentic spiritual community like our church that allows people to begin to share exactly where they are. And the layers of the onion come down, which creates a learning environment where we can be ourselves. And then that opens us up in a trusting way to be open, to be receptive of the messages that we're going to get from Spirit and share with each other. You see, it calls us to live in alignment when we live authentically, in alignment with our truest selves, even in the presence of challenges or absence of external validation. When we begin to commit to a path of evolution and transformation and self-actualization, it creates that powerful force that's unleashed in our communities to be more than we are as individuals. Ernest Holmes also said, and those of you in Science of Mind will know this quote, what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see, he said, a student of this science prove its principle than have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. This perspective, it highlights that merely knowing the words or the ideas is not enough. That true understanding and growth comes from embodying and living the principles. It's easy to recite the quotes, but it's quite another thing to actually live from that space in a way that supports ourselves, our community, and the world around us. And this encompasses creating spaces. Churches must create safe spaces for people to be authentically themselves. And we have that commitment to allow that to take place, because that allows people to move from that place of authenticity. When we talk about creating space, as I said, we have a collective responsibility to create that space that's open, authentic, and safe for others to embark on their own journey of self-discovery. The movement from good to great to grand is not just an individual one, but one that is part of our collective vision to become a reality. This sacred act of creating space fosters an environment where individuals are liberated to explore their authentic selves. I mean, how many of us know who we are at any given moment, right? It's an exploration. Things are changing. We're humans are reacting. We have, reactions to unfettered societal expectations or judgments. But by nurturing our space together, we honor the inherent potential within each individual. Such endeavor requires cultivating empathy, compassion, and a deep respect for the individuality of others. Embracing that importance of creating space not only empowers them to blossom into their fullest expression, but also contributes to the collective tapestry, that infinite web of existence that we're all a part of. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the concept of more than words. And I started hearing that love song and looked at the lyrics, more than words. I was like, oh, that doesn't fit. It's a good song, but it's about broken hearts. But it is more than our words, it is about our actions, right? It requires a commitment to actively demonstrate to actively demonstrate our support and acceptance of those within our community. Not in just proclamations, but in tangible actions that create an inclusive and nurturing environment for individuals to explore themselves. Through our actions, we become catalysts for change, dismantling those barriers and empowering others to unapologetically pursue their passions and aspirations. This is what helps transmute and transmit the community into a greater expression. Following the murder of George Floyd, Stephanie Dillon of the Rolling Stone magazine Culture Council, really interesting article she's written. She offered questions to those who want to end oppression, what they should ask themselves. First one is, how do I treat others? Do my practices align with my values? How am I holding others accountable? But the biggest question, she says, is, who am I when no one is looking? Right? Who am I when no one is looking? As we are liberated from the need for external validation, we can begin to recognize how our creative ability impacts the interconnected web of all humanity, shaping that fabric that is shared in our existences. Now, what about when our no one is watching isn't so pretty? You know, have any of you ever had a not great thought about ourselves or the person next to us or the person on TV or the person in authority? Oh, yeah. And I think, what kind of energy are you putting out there, Mr. Minister? Well, it's not to judge it as bad, but when we have those actions that are out of alignment, when someone is showing up authentically as themselves and I don't like it, then I get to look at myself and say, okay, what is this in me that is seeking healing? And is there something that needs to be spoken here? And that's okay too, because she asked the question, how am I holding others accountable? You know, but when people are in their authentic self, when you can tell that their energy is full and pure and real and maybe out of alignment with what I see, then there's an opportunity for dialogue and conversation and an opportunity for spiritual practice. That's why we come to church. It's why we take classes. It's why we call someone for wise counsel or for a prayer, to know that fostering beauty and authenticity in spiritual community sometimes means bringing out people's not always best sides, because we come to church to celebrate and we come to church to heal. And sometimes healing means I'm not living authentically. I need to open it up and allow the light in to be a place of healing. So when we act from this understanding and we embody integrity and mindfulness, when we infuse each action with a sense of purpose and calling individuals' contributions out, these are the moments that we are tapping into the wellspring of infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinite creativity. These are the moments where we can transform our communities. And it's through this conscious alignment of the internal and external landscape that we become architects of that collective experience. So as we begin to create brave and safe spaces for the self-actualization of others, it's important to remember that words are not enough. It is through our conscious actions, both seen and unseen, that we can create transformative spaces for others to embrace their true selves. We are called to actively practice empathy and compassion and acceptance, engaging in dismantling the societal barriers and limitations that keep us from being our authentic selves. And let's remember too that in our private moments, we remember that our thoughts, our actions, and our beliefs directly shape the collective experience of our world. By living our truth, embracing our self-expression, and creating space for others to self-actualize, we become beacons for this empowerment, catalysts for change, and creators of a world where authenticity is the norm and every individual is given an opportunity to thrive. Together, we can forge a path forward towards a world where everyone can unapologetically be themselves and contribute to a more vibrant, compassionate, and interconnected life. I say yes to that. I know that the energy in this room commits to that. And as we move into the discussion period here, I think it's great to hear your thoughts, but also keep in mind something like, who am I when no one is looking? How do I treat others? And do my practices align with my values? How do I speak about others and think about others? They are not present. Oops. How can I create safe and brave spaces for authentic expression and the self-actualization of others? Thank you all very much.
I'm gonna do this slowly.
You want to turn off the.
Oh, sorry.